Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the Chai Academy, an incredible resource for study, all based on Judaism, Jewish philosophy, Jewish thoughts, Jewish insights, inspiration, gleaned from many, many, many sources. If this is your first time, then welcome. And if this is not your first time, welcome back. And if this is your first time or not your first time, just as a reminder, you can see hundreds of classes given by yours truly on YouTube, Spotify, and just literally hundreds of classes, approximately 30 minutes each. So I encourage you to check it out. So the previous classes, we were talking about happiness, we were talking about anxiety, depression, and it got me thinking that a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression and a lot of our quirks are from childhood, plain and simple. I mean, and nobody goes through childhood unscathed. We're all going to be a product of our upbringing. When I say unscathed, I mean positive or negative, even though unscathed. But it's everything, right? It's however we were brought up will dictate or can dictate, if we're not careful, the rest of our life. If we were dragged up, we'll drag through life. If we were brought up proud, we'll be proud people. If we're brought up narcissistic, we'll be a narcissist. So there's a Talmud. There's a fascinating Talmud. Fascinating, truly fascinating. And what it does, it's in the tractate of Kedushin. It says the following are the six things parents are obligated to do for their children. And we'll say all six now, but I think it's not really what is in the six, is kind of what's omitted from the six, at least at first glance. So the first thing is that parents are obligated to circumcise their child. Right? Now, obviously, circumcision is only with a male, but regardless, that's one of the. Do you know why a female does not need circumcision? It's because she is born more complete than a male. A male has a certain blockage, spiritually speaking, so therefore it translates, it manifests into a physical foreskin. So the obligation to circumcise. The second one is an obligation to redeem. We all know that I say that tongue in cheek, but there is the firstborn male of a couple born natural delivery on the 31st day needs to be redeemed. Basically, you go to somebody who's a Kohen and you give them $5 silver and they bless your child. It's a formality. It's actually a beautiful thing, but it's not for now. The third one is to teach Torah. You have to teach your child Torah. The fourth one is to marry him off, right? You gotta, you hatch him and then you dispatch him. So you gotta marry him off. The fifth one is to teach a vocation, teach a trade. And the last one is teach your child to swim. To swim. So just a quick overview. Circumcision, redemption of the firstborn. Torah, get him married, teach him a trade, vocation, and the last one is teach him how to swim. So all nice things, but there's what about love? What about teach your child how to love? What about teach your child how to swim, fish, my goodness, sail, bowl, shoot, soccer, basketball, right? Teach a child from a young age how you get into the Harvard, which there are people who do that, by the way. There are prep preschools, believe it or not. So it is, there's so many different things. Why these six? Why these six? So it's there's very extremely deep lessons here. Extremely deep lessons. And we'll go through all six and we'll explain what they mean, what the sages meant, or what we can glean from them that will give us insights in how to rear a child so the child is happy. So the child, these are six tools to bring up a human. So it's not a class on parenting, it's a class on human development. So the first item is circumcision. So circumcision is it's a physical, minor surgery. I mean, you know the difference between minor and major surgery. Minor is when it happens to you, major is when it happens to me. So it's a surgery where they snip off some skin, and it is actually healthier for the boy as he grows through adulthood. But the Torah tells us the reason behind circumcision is that it's to connect you to your ancestors. So if we would put circumcision in other words, I would phrase it that the circumcision, instead of saying circumcision being very narrow to cutting skin of a certain part of the male's anatomy, I would rather say it's identity. Give your child an identity. You know the story about Albert Einstein. So he was a brilliant man and gave the world tremendous. I mean, he was vindicated. He was so ahead of his time, and he was completely vindicated with his theories. And then the story is told that he may have been brilliant, but he was a little bit absent-minded. So he was on a train, and sitting on a train, the conductor comes by, not unlike the Long Island Railroad. Tickets. And he came into the first class section. There's the famous Albert Einstein, and he goes, "Mr. Einstein, ticket. Professor Einstein, ticket." And Einstein goes, he opens his satchel, he opens the valise, he checks into his pockets, he looks around, and he goes, I can't find my ticket. So the conductor says, "Professor, don't worry about it. We know who you are. We know there's no question you bought a ticket. Don't worry about it. It's forgotten. Okay? Have a great day. It's an honor meeting you." So the conductor moves on. Meanwhile, Albert Einstein is getting more and more aggravated as time goes on. He checks his pockets again. He checks his satchel again. His briefcase, attaché case, his luggage, his valise, is this, that, and the other, under his hat and in his hat, and he cannot find this ticket. So the next step is for him to go on the floor. So now he's looking under his seat. So the professor, the famed Albert Einstein, is on all fours, trying to find his ticket. The conductor comes over and it says, "Professor Einstein, stop it. You have integrity here. No one's challenging you. Stop it. It's over. We believe you bought a ticket. These things happen. We know who you are. Right? You're a well-known figure. We know who you are." So Einstein looks up. He's on his all fours. He goes, "You may know who I am. And I know who I am. But what I don't know is where I'm going." Identity. Who are we? Where are we going? So, we have to know that we are not just born as another person. We're not just one of 7 point something billion people. We're not. Just like every fingerprint is unique, every iris print is unique, so too is every human being unique. We are each here for a specific purpose. We're here for a mission. We pray every day, Letaken olam b'malchut shindalia. To letaken olam, to repair the world with a kingship of God, by the kingship of God. So it's not just repair the world the way we think, but rather it's more of a godly enterprise. What to make this place a dwelling place for God, to make this place a home. Definition of home, by the way, is where they let you in. So to make this home, allow God in, right? That's why it's so important. We have Israel, because we have a homeland, because it's been proven that the Jewish people did not have a homeland, and therefore 6 million died, right? So it's important to have a homeland, a place where they'll let us in, and that's the law of Israel land, the law of return. You can come into our country if you're a persecuted Jew. So to let God in, we have to be letaken olam. We have to make this world a fitting place, right? I cannot imagine God is happy with Russia or Ukraine, that war. I can't imagine God is looking and saying, "Wow, you go, cowboy," ooh, that was an awesome bomb. What creativity! You got to believe that God is sitting on a low bench, sitting shiva, figuratively, for the lives lost, maimed, or hurt. So we have a mission, and it's letaken olam, not to hurt the world, not to ruin the world, but rather to repair the world, to fix the world, to make the world kosher. And so we have to give our kids an identity. We have to tell them who our parents were, who our grandparents were. We have to tell them what stock we came from. And if you're Jewish, you trace our lineage to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, heroes and heroines. You have to let them know that they come from a long chain. There's a link here that we're continuing. And it's up to us not to break the chain. It's up to us to continue the legacy of our family members. And we have to tell our human development, as part of human development. We have to talk about the good times and the bad times, but not just get stuck on the bad times. We have to talk about the Holocaust. Yes, there was a Holocaust. Yes, there was the destruction of the first temple. Yes, there was the destruction of the second temple. Yes, we were kicked out of England, Spain, Portugal, and we were almost kicked out of the United States by Ulysses Grant. Yes, we have a sordid history, but that's not our only thing we have. We also got the Torah directly from God. We also introduced someone like Moses to the world. We introduced a consciousness into the world. We come from very, very good stock. Right? And we're the people that brought Jonas Salk, the polio vaccine, right? Eli Wiesel. Right? We are people who helped found, for crying out loud, the NAACP. Take a look at the founders. Right? So you have to tell to our Jewish kids. We have to tell them, and by the way, not Jewish kids. You have to tell them your legacy also. Right? And you have to tell them that we're all children of God. We're all holy. We all mean something to God, and we all need to mean something to one another. And I heard a phenomenal story, which I think just echoes the point, is where there was, just like in the United States, there was the tomb of the unknown soldier. So too in Israel, there are number of soldiers that are buried that we don't know who they are. So this particular story was these high schoolers. In Israel, you're drafted into the army, and you have for 3 years. So I think it's like from 17 and a half or 18, and then for 3 years you're in the army, and then you go to college. It's part and parcel of the system, and that's the way it is. And these high school kids, not all of them want to go to the army. Some do. It's a source of pride, but not all. They want to get on with their life, or why? What am I fighting for? Remember, this is part of identity, human development. So these kids all over the country are taken to Mount Herzl. Mount Herzl, of course, is where the former prime ministers are buried, and this is where the different soldiers who died in battle, that's where they're buried. The 1948 War of Independence, and of course there's the 6-Day War, and then there's the Yom Kippur War, and then even as late as the Gaza wars that we've had. That's where soldiers buried. So they take them and they show them, look how many soldiers dedicated their life, gave up their life so you can live freely. So the story is told about the group of high schoolers, 12th graders. They were going to Mount Herzl. They came to a specific spot, and they said, this is the famous story of 70 soldiers who died in one day. It was a battle in 1948, the Battle of Castile, a road to Jerusalem, and 70 soldiers were killed. And on the headstones, it has their name, it has their platoon number, it has the date of death, and it has their army number, their dog tag number. There was one that it says date of death, the part of the 70 soldiers, how he died, what he died for, defending a road to Jerusalem, his dog tag number, and then it said anonymous. We don't know who this person is. So of course, in this day and age, how do you not know? But what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to DNA 16 million Jews with. So what's the backstory? So the kids asked, what's the backstory? How is he an unknown? They said, well, what happened is that this fellow, what we do know about him is that he escaped from a camp. And if it was a concentration camp or a extermination camp, I don't know. He escaped and made it on an illegal boat to British-mandated Palestine. And he snuck in. And so as soon as he snuck in, and he came, this young, able-bodied person, he was about 17, 18 years old, he was given a gun, and he said, fight for your country. And he knew what it meant to fight for your country. So he took the gun with pride, and the next day he was killed. He was killed. Now, nobody knew his name because his entire platoon was killed. Maybe they knew him as Maishala, Arala, who knows? But nobody knew his name. And so, serial number, thank you. So he was buried, and he was buried as, he says, there's no fact. We don't know. There's no way to trace this. We don't know who it is. And all we know is that it was a terrible tragedy. He escaped the Holocaust, and then he died in Israel, defending Israel. And these kids were overwhelmed. These high school kids were just completely overwhelmed with emotion. Anyway, this tour guide, that's what he specializes in, taking high school kids. So he's supposed to inspire them to join the army and know what they're fighting for. Parenthetically, a little bit of history. Hitler initially didn't want to kill the Jews. He wanted to expel every Jew out of Europe. That's what he wanted to do. Definitely out of Germany and surrounding areas. But when he saw by the conference, Evian in France, that nobody cared about the Jews, he says, well, why expel them when we can get rid of him once and for all. So this soldier who came from the concentration camp was acutely aware. Anyway, passes a couple of years, don't know how long. This tour guide was called up. This special tour guide who works for the IDF was called up and says, "We located the man's family." He says, "You did?" He says, "Yeah, the unknown soldier on Mount Herzl, one of the 70 in the platoon. Yeah. We located his family." So he goes, and in fact, on the yard site in a couple of weeks, we're going to meet his family members there. So he goes, "That's unbelievable. I plan to come there." So he came there. The tour guide came, and he was waiting to meet the family. And who did he meet? These group of high school kids from this certain high school who were arguing, "What about DNA? What about DNA?" And they said to him, "We are his family." And one of them said Kaddish on his yard site. That's identity. That's identity. They didn't know this guy from Adam, but they knew this much, that we come from a long chain, and we can't be indifferent to the fact that we come from a long chain. Judaism is not a hobby. Judaism is in our DNA. It's part of whom we are. It's whom we are. We are, it's greatly debated. Are we a race? Are we a religion? Are we are yes and yes. And we are family. We are family. And we have a rich heritage as a family. And they tell another story of Napoleon. He came, he was visiting Israel. It happened to be Tisha B'Av, on the anniversary of the destruction of the Holy Temple. And he sees people sitting on low benches, and they're crying. He went from community to community, and everybody's sitting on low benches, and everybody's mourning. So he goes, "What are they mourning? What are they, what happened here?" They said, "Well, they lost their big, they lost their big temple, which was that's how they worship their God." So he goes, "By whom?" So they said, "By the Romans." He goes, "Romans from Rome?" He goes, No, the ancient Romans." He goes, "Are you talking about in around the the current era, a few years before, a few years after? Are you talking about that time frame?" So they said, yes. He said, "So you're talking about, it's a long time ago." They said, "Yeah." He goes, "And they're mourning now?" He said, "Yeah." He goes, "Wow, that's unbelievable." Napoleon gets it. Napoleon understands that when we celebrate Passover, it's because Passover, it seemingly happened a long time ago. But if you think about it, Jewish history, what is Jewish history? 3,300, 3,400 years ago? I always say this, that when you sitting at a Seder with your grandchildren, they are connected to your grandparents who you sat when you were a kid, and your grandparents who you met sat at their Seder of their grandparents. So we've just closed the gap considerably of how many years it was from Moses, right? Napoleon gets it. We sit at the Passover Seder not because it's a time to fight with our family. And it's not even because it's a time to get together with family members that we do like, or to have Manischewitz wine once a year. God forbid. Kosherwine.com, that's who I buy my wine from. But it's because Judaism is alive. And this is what you have to impart to your children, an identity. You cannot only talk about the Holocaust. You cannot. The kids will run for their lives. Why be associated with the dead people? Only dead people. You know, when we bring out a speaker on the Holocaust, we get 300 to 500 people. When we bring out a speaker on a contemporary issue, the deeper meaning behind Passover, we'll get 15 people. We're smitten with the Holocaust, and it's a mistake. Our identity is part of us is the Holocaust. But we have an extremely rich, positive history. What we brought to the world, as I said earlier, is just amazing. It's just amazing. So we have to tell our kids. We have to tell our kids. If you know qualities of your grandparents, great-grandparents, share them. If you don't, then tell them stories of Maimonides. Tell them stories of Nachmanides. Tell them stories of Rashi. Tell them stories of Barnabel. Tell them stories, you know, of Moses, Abraham, Sarah. Unbelievable things you know. And by the way, the Chai Academy has a lot of it, a lot of information about Jewish history, modern and you know, we have a whole series on famous Jewish personalities, from secular to religious. You need to tell them that this is who we're from, and give them an identity. There are reasons why there's 52% intermarriage. There's a reason why our kids are not sticking with it. And the reason is we haven't shown them the beauty and the importance of this chain that they're a part of. Right? If you have the wherewithal, make a family tree. Right? Show them. Because I hear from so many people, my grandfather was this big rabbi in Peshemish. My grandfather was a big rabbi in Lublin. My this and my that. They got to say it about you. It's got to be a double-way street. And the only way to do it, is to inculcate them with Jewish pride. Inculcate them with a sense of belonging and purpose. And that, my dear friends, is the first human development. They're not born in a vacuum. Of course, they're starting their own chain, but they're born on giant shoulders. Then others get to step on their shoulders. So that is the first thing, identity. And whatever that means to you. Whatever that means to you. We will, throughout the coming few classes, be discussing what it means redemption, what it means Torah, what it means marry off your kid. Good luck with that. What it means to teach him a trade and to teach him how to swim. Deep, deep meanings in all of these things. Very, very deep meanings. And it will also, you know, if you think about a teenager today, right? We argue with our kids. When will you be home? I don't want you to stay out later than 11 o'clock. Well, what does that mean? 11 o'clock. I'm going to be later than that, right? You show your kids that they're more than just them. We may have a different conversation with them. Just maybe. God bless. If you enjoyed this class, please share it. If you didn't enjoy this class, then don't share it. Let me know which one you did.